Hey everyone, this is darkfireslide, and today I'll be going over my picks for the top 10 player-played nations in EU4. These are nations with a lot of potential to excel at the start of the game, but usually fall flat by the mid-game or end-game. This list will not include nations such as the legendary Albania or the mighty Ryukyu, as those nations fall under a different category of nations. I'll be ranking this list by how well the AI typically does, versus their potential based on national ideas and routes for early expansion. So, without further ado, let's begin. Number 10. Vamanos. Our first nation takes us to the fertile lands of India, where we find ourselves a regional power with stellar ideas, surrounded by plenty of opportunities for expansion. So, what could possibly go wrong? Well, unfortunately for Vamanos, they are neighbors with a bigger, unfriendly major power by the name of Vijayanagar. And because Vijayanagar is bigger, they often cause AI Vamanos a bit of a headache, if not being the source of their downfall. A player playing Vamanos, however, has no trouble sweeping aside this major power as they move to unite the Indian lands. Number 9. Ethiopia. The number 9 spot belongs to a reasonably and relatively strong nation, surrounded by multiple routes of early expansion. However, there are a few problems which plague both AI Ethiopia and player-controlled Ethiopia. For starters, much of their land and routes of expansion are covered in mountains, making warfare difficult. As well, many nations around Ethiopia tend to ally together with potential to form an unbreakable alliance if Ethiopia isn't careful. While a player can overcome these issues, the AI usually can't, and if Ethiopia survives, it tends to more or less stay where it started and eventually become annexed by the Ottoman Empire. Number 8. Venice. At number 8 is a strong, rich merchant republic with plenty of avenues for expansion. Venice is large enough to ally major powers like France and Poland with ease, and can expand in virtually any direction if they can find a way to snipe Austria out of the picture. And Italy has strong ideas to carry them through the late game. Unfortunately, early wars with the Ottomans and Austria usually leave this contender quite lacking in the land department. Even an AI Venice without these problems usually is just content to sit around and collect money until the end of time. Number 7. Castile and Spain. At number 7, we have our western superpower in the wings, the nation of Castile. Castile has a good amount of land, as well as decent options for trade, and they even start with plus 15% land morale. So what's the problem? Well, that mainly has to do with Spain's neighbors. Spain is cursed with rather poor options for expansion. Aragon and Portugal usually have strong allies, if not allying each other. France blocks expansion to the north, and the Berber clay to the south isn't really worth the extra coring cost. As a result, AI Spain rarely expands beyond its starting place, and a belligerent Aragon and a personal union and an auto-allied Portugal to England basically assure nothing but trouble for the AI. Even if AI Spain makes the unions work, it doesn't really expand much after that. Number 6. Japan. Anyone who has played the Land of the Rising Sun is probably aware of their potential. Strong troops and a strong navy mean expansion into Korea is possible, especially the earlier this task is accomplished. Unfortunately, given the AI's general inability to effectively navally invade, as well as Korea's tendency to ally Ming, means that AI Japan usually just sits in its island for the majority of the game, which is a shame given their potential, especially with a Ming collapse. Number 5. The Timurids. The Timurids are one of the strongest nations in EU4 at game start. So why do the AI Timurids end up doing so poorly most of the time? Well, the primary reason for the failure of the Big Red Blob is that most of their land is wrong culture, namely Persian, and wrong religion, namely Shia. This means that Persian nationalist rebels constantly spawn like wildfire in the country, with large rebellions that the AI generally doesn't have the finesse to deal with, especially given the mountainous terrain of the area. Add horde autonomy to the mix, and it's a little surprise that the Timurids do so poorly, which is a shame considering their potential to become the mighty Mughal Empire. Number 4. The Teutonic Order and Brandenburg. At the number 4 slot of our list, we have two of the most popular and powerful Germanic nations. Both have fairly strong ideas, and both can reform into the indomitable Prussia, and Brandenburg even starts with Prussian ideas. How could this go poorly? Well, for the Teutons, an early war from Poland usually knocks them out of the running, unless they happen to ally someone exceptionally powerful, which usually they don't, and AI Brandenburg tends to lack the aggression and ambition necessary to take the required states in order to form Prussia, or even enough land in order to become a strong state in the HRE period. These two factors mean these two prestigious states rarely do well unless guided by the careful hands of a player, and I myself personally have only seen Prussia formed once in all my time playing EU4. Number 3, Denmark. This pick is a bit of an interesting one. Denmark starts the game essentially having already formed Scandinavia. So where does it all go wrong? Well, being the leader of the Kalmar Union means that they have two fairly unruly vassals, Sweden and Norway. As well, the routes for expansion for this nation aren't as obvious as others. Denmark's early expansion revolves around using the unions to quickly expand into Livonian and Teutonic lands, which will quickly be under siege by the Polish-Lithuanian Union. Expansion into the HRE is only really possible with strong allies or a weak emperor, so the seaborne route is usually the best choice. Unfortunately, AI Denmark is usually incompetent in this regard, usually resulting in a swift independence war from Sweden and only becoming weaker from there. A player, on the other hand, can make use of the powerhouse that Denmark really is at the start of the game to keep its vassals in check and make strong alliances to prevent early independence wars. Number 2. England. At the number 2 slot, we have arguably one of the most powerful and prestigious, yet also troubled nations in the game. England starts with a myriad of opportunities. The British Isles are practically already under English control, and France is one good alliance from being easy clay for an English monarch to carve up. A few things work against an AI England, unfortunately, that stop this prodigious start. For starters, France tends to ally Castile quite frequently, with England unable to secure any meaningful alliances henceforth. England also has to deal with the Peasants' War and the War of the Roses, and, as we've discussed with the Timurids, the AI is rather unfortunately terrible when it comes to dealing with rebels. As such, England's massive potential is typically wasted unless controlled by a player. And now we have some honorable mentions. For this list, I have a few honorable mentions for nations which are seemingly strong but don't quite make the list. First off, we have Karakoyunlu, as well as the Mamluks, both of whom have pretty good options for expansion but are typically delayed by the Ottomans. Next we have Novgorod, a nation which can do pretty well considering it's a republic but is usually curb-stomped by Muscovy in the early game. And lastly, I would love to mention the nation of Korea as well, as a nation which can do fairly well but typically doesn't. And with that, we'll move on to the number 1 spot on this list. Number 1, Hungary. Never was so much potential wasted by so good a country. Hungary has access to an easy alliance with Austria, even without accepting a Habsburg to the throne. They have good ideas, and the powers of Europe are often eager to fight against the Polish Commonwealth and the Ottomans, allowing good routes for expansion despite the threats these countries pose. They even have good ideas, including a special idea that gives them the ability to completely ignore religious intolerance penalties that may allow a Hungarian player to simply ignore humanist ideas altogether. The tragedy of the situation, however, is that because Hungarian is an isolated culture, AI Hungary rarely has the ambition or drive to turn Hungary into a true empire. Worse yet, they often fall into a union under Austria for free and get subsequently annexed as a result. Thank you for watching this top 10 video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and comment with your own top 10 or a list you would like to see. And subscribe if you want to see more in the future. This has been darkfireslide, and I'll see you on the next one.